My husband threatened divorce after our daughters called him toxic, but before he could, I filed first and took everything. The house, the money, the future we built. I thought I was finally choosing myself. 10 years later, I'm sitting in that same house, alone, wondering if empowerment was worth destroying my entire family. I'm Cassie. I'm 42, and I completely destroyed my family because I thought I was doing the right thing. But let me start from the beginning, because this whole mess didn't happen overnight. I had what everyone would call the perfect life, 23 years married to Mike, 5 kids, a beautiful house in a nice neighborhood. Mike was one of those guys who just worked and worked and worked, never complained about overtime, turned down promotions if they meant we'd have to move because he said our happiness mattered more than his career advancement. At the time, I thought that was so sweet, so selfless. Now I realize maybe I should have questioned why he was so afraid of change. But whatever, our routine was solid. Mike would leave for work, I'd handle everything at home, and I mean everything: school pickups, grocery shopping, doctor appointments, remembering whose turn it was to bring snacks to soccer practice. The mental load was insane, but that's just what moms do, right? I was basically running a small business, keeping track of 5 different schedules, while Mike just had to show up to work and come home. Don't get me wrong, he helped when he was around. He'd do homework with the kids sometimes, fix things around the house, and we'd watch TV together after everyone went to bed. It was comfortable, predictable. I thought we had it figured out. Mike talked about retiring early at 46, which sounded amazing. Finally time for us to travel, maybe rediscover each other as a couple instead of just being co-parents in survival mode. The house was always busy but good busy. Kids had friends over, family dinners every night, weekend activities. I posted about our life on Facebook all the time because honestly, we looked great. Everyone commented about how lucky I was, how perfect our family seemed. Mike would smile in the photos, put his arm around me, play the part of devoted husband and father. Looking back, maybe I should have noticed that he seemed tired a lot, not just work tired, but like emotionally checked out sometimes. But I figured that was normal after 20+ years of marriage and 5 kids. We were both running on autopilot most of the time, just getting through each day, each week, each month. The kids were getting older, more independent. Our oldest was a senior in high school, getting ready for college. I remember thinking this was going to be our golden phase. Kids would start launching, we'd have more time and money for ourselves, maybe finally get to focus on our relationship instead of just managing chaos. Mike seemed excited about this too. He'd talk about places we could visit once we didn't have to coordinate around school schedules. We'd joke about what we'd do with all the quiet time once the house wasn't full of teenagers. I genuinely thought we were heading toward the best part of our marriage. Everything felt stable, secure, predictable. Mike provided, I managed everything else. The kids were thriving. What could go wrong with a system that had worked for over 2 decades? I had no idea that our oldest daughter was about to come home from her first year of college and completely blow up everything I thought I knew about my life. Then our oldest came home from college and everything changed. I'm talking completely different person, purple hair, nose piercing, tattoos on her arms. The physical changes were shocking enough, but her attitude was what really threw me. Suddenly, everything Mike and I had taught her was wrong. Everything we believed was outdated. Everything about our family dynamic was problematic. She started using words I'd never heard before: patriarchy, toxic masculinity, emotional labor, mental load. At first, I thought it was just college kids stuff. You know, kids go away, get exposed to new ideas, come back thinking they know everything. I figured she'd grow out of it once she got into the real world and realized how things actually work. But she was relentless. Every conversation became a lecture. Mike would ask her about school, and she'd turn it into some speech about how the education system perpetuates inequality. I'd mention something about household chores, and she'd go off about gendered expectations and unpaid labor. Family dinners became these tense debates where she'd analyze everything we said for hidden meanings and problematic assumptions. The thing is, some of what she said actually made sense. Like when she pointed out that Mike never had to remember anyone's schedule, keep track of school events, plan meals, or coordinate carpools. That was all just automatically my job. And if I forgot something or messed up, it was my fault. But if Mike occasionally helped with homework or drove someone somewhere, he got praised for being such a good dad. She'd pull me aside when Mike wasn't around and ask me questions that made me uncomfortable. When was the last time I did something just for myself? What were my goals outside of taking care of everyone else? What did I want that had nothing to do with being a wife and mother? Honestly, I couldn't answer those questions. I'd been so focused on everyone else's needs for so long that I completely lost track of my own. But I felt guilty thinking that way because Mike worked so hard for us. He never complained about providing for 5 kids, never made me feel bad about not having a traditional career. He seemed happy with our arrangement. So shouldn't I be happy too? My daughter would shake her head when I said stuff like that, like I was missing some obvious point. She started sharing articles with me about women who'd lost themselves in marriage and motherhood, stories about wives who woke up at 40 or 50 and realized they had no idea who they were outside of their roles as caregivers. The women in these articles sounded exactly like me, and that was terrifying. Mike didn't know what to do with our daughter's new personality. He'd try to shut down her lectures, tell her she was being disrespectful, that she needed to appreciate what she had instead of complaining all the time. But that just made her angrier. She'd accuse him of not being able to handle strong women, of trying to silence her because her ideas threatened his comfortable position. I found myself caught in the middle, trying to keep peace between them while also secretly wondering if maybe she had a point about some things. The house felt different when she was home, charged with this tension that hadn't been there before. And honestly, part of me was curious about this new way of thinking, even though it made me feel disloyal too. In everything we'd built together, the worst part was watching her influence spread to the other kids like some kind of virus. Our second daughter, still in high school, started coming home with the same attitude. Suddenly, she was questioning why she had more chores than her brother, why she was expected to help with dinner while he just had to take out the trash. She started talking about double standards and gender roles, parroting everything her older sister had been saying. Then our third daughter joined in. She was only 15 but started analyzing every interaction, every family rule, every expectation through this new lens of unfairness and inequality. Even our youngest, barely 13, began questioning things that had never been questioned before. Why did the girls have to help fold laundry but their brother didn't? Why was I the one who always planned birthday parties and remembered relatives' anniversaries? Our son, the only boy, became the target of all this criticism. His sisters would gang up on him about his male privilege and how he needed to check himself. They'd lecture him about being more aware, more helpful, more conscious of his advantages. The poor kid was only 16, and suddenly everything he did was wrong just because he was born male. The house became this constant battlefield of ideology. Every dinner conversation turned into a debate about fairness, gender roles, and social expectations. Mike tried to shut it down, said they were all being disrespectful and ungrateful, but that just proved their point about him being controlling and unable to handle women speaking their minds. I suggested family counseling because I thought maybe a professional could help us navigate this new dynamic. The therapist kept asking about communication patterns and emotional needs, but Mike would just sit there with his arms crossed, waiting for the session to be over. He'd say everything was fine until the kids started acting up with all this feminist nonsense. The girls would share looks during these sessions like they were watching Mike prove their point in real time. They'd talk about feeling unheard and dismissed, about how their father couldn't engage with their concerns without getting defensive. And honestly, they weren't wrong. Mike did shut down whenever they brought up anything that challenged the way our family worked. I started having conversations with the girls when Mike wasn't around. They made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years, like I was a real person with valid thoughts and feelings, instead of just the family manager who kept everything running smoothly. They'd ask me about my dreams, my goals, what I wanted for myself beyond taking care of everyone else. But then I feel guilty because Mike was working so hard to support all of us. He'd never asked me to give up my own ambitions, had he? Or maybe he had, in subtle ways, by expecting me to handle everything domestic while he focused on his career. The girls would nod knowingly when I expressed these conflicted feelings, like they'd seen this pattern before. The house felt divided now, Mike and our son on one side, me and the girls on another. Mike would make sarcastic comments about the girls' attitudes and their faces, which just convinced them more that he was exactly the kind of man they were learning to recognize and resist. Everything came to a head during winter break when all 4 girls were home at the same time. They were completely united in this mission to educate Mike about his problematic behavior. Every little thing became evidence of his toxicity. He'd ask someone to grab him a drink from the kitchen, and they'd lecture him about treating women like servants. He'd make a harmless joke, and they'd call it a microaggression or internalized misogyny. I watched my husband, this man who'd worked his entire adult life to provide for our family, being treated like some kind of villain in his own house. But I also started seeing what they were talking about, the way he expected things to just happen without acknowledging the work behind them, how he dismissed their concerns as oversensitive instead of actually listening to what they were saying. The breaking point came during a massive argument about household responsibilities. The girls were going off about how unfair the division of labor was, how Mike benefited from my unpaid work, how he needed to step up and take more responsibility for the family he'd helped create. They were relentless, bringing up specific examples, citing statistics about women's unpaid labor, making their case like they were arguing in court. Mike finally exploded. He started yelling about how ungrateful they all were, how he'd sacrificed his whole life for this family, how they didn't appreciate anything he provided. He listed all the ways he'd put their needs first, all the opportunities he'd given up, all the hours he'd worked to give them a comfortable life. That's when they really let him have it. They called him toxic, manipulative, emotionally abusive. Said he was using his financial contributions to control and guilt everyone, that he couldn't handle women having opinions or standing up for themselves. The words they used were harsh, cutting, designed to hurt. Mike lost it completely. His face went red, his hands were shaking, and he screamed that if we were all so miserable with him, maybe we'd be better off without him. He said he was done trying to please people who would never be satisfied, done being the villain in his own home. He threatened divorce, said maybe everyone would be happier if he just left. Then he went completely silent. Even the girls looked shocked that they'd pushed him that far. I felt this weird mix of panic and relief, like finally everything was out in the open. No more pretending everything was fine, no more walking on eggshells around the growing tension. Mike stormed out, and I was left with 4 crying daughters who suddenly realized they might have pushed their father away for good. But mixed in with their tears was this sense of vindication, like his explosion had proven everything they'd been saying about his inability to handle conflict or criticism. For the next few weeks, Mike seemed different, quieter, more distant, like he was mentally checking out of the family drama. When the girls went back to school, he tried to act like everything was normal, but something fundamental had shifted. He wasn't engaging the same way with any of us. The temporary peace when the girls were back at school felt hollow and fake. Mike thought things would return to normal, but I couldn't unsee what I'd seen or unhear what I'd heard. Every day felt like I was playing a role in someone else's life instead of living my own. The girls would call and text, checking in on me, asking if I was okay, reminding me that I deserved better than being taken for granted. I started meeting with a lawyer quietly, just to understand my options. What would I be entitled to after 23 years of marriage? What rights did I have? To the house, the savings, his retirement accounts. Our oldest daughter actually helped me research this, explaining how the system often disadvantages women who've sacrificed their careers for family. The more I learned, the more I realized I held more power than I'd ever understood. Mike had been so focused on being the provider that he put everything in both our names: the house, the investments, the retirement funds. All of it was legally half mine. I'd earned it through 2 decades of unpaid labor managing the household and raising his children. My 45th birthday was coming up, and I made a decision that shocked everyone, including myself. I'd been thinking about it for months, imagining what it would feel like to finally choose myself for once, instead of always choosing everyone else's comfort and happiness. The morning of my birthday, I served Mike with divorce papers. I'll never forget the look on his face, complete shock and disbelief. He kept asking why, what had changed, couldn't we work this out? But I was done working things out on his terms. I was done being the one who always compromised, always adjusted, always made everyone else comfortable while disappearing myself. He tried to argue, to negotiate, to convince me I was making a huge mistake. He promised things would change, that he'd listen better, that we could go to counseling and figure this out. But it was too late. I'd already mentally moved on, already imagined a life where I wasn't constantly managing everyone else's needs and emotions. The divorce was brutal and expensive, but I was determined to get what I deserved. 23 years of marriage, and I walked away with a house, most of the savings, a significant chunk of his retirement fund. The only thing I let him have was primary custody of our son, who clearly blamed me and his sisters for destroying the family. Mike had to move in with his sister and start completely over at 45 years old. Meanwhile, I kept the house, the neighborhood, the social circle, the life we'd built together. It felt like the ultimate victory. The girls were so proud of me for finally choosing myself, for breaking free from a situation that wasn't serving me. Social media was full of supportive comments from other women who'd been through similar situations. I felt validated, empowered, like I was finally living authentically instead of just existing in someone else's vision of what my life should be. 10 years later, and I need to tell you the truth about winning, it's not what I thought it would be. And honestly, I'm not sure I actually won anything except the right to be completely alone. Mike took that promotion he'd always turned down and doubled his salary. He moved across the country, focused entirely on his career and our son, who ended up getting a full scholarship to Princeton. Meanwhile, my perfect victory started crumbling piece by piece. The girls I fought so hard to support and validate, they're all struggling with the consequences of the mindset I helped them embrace. Our oldest is absolutely miserable, can't maintain a relationship because her standards for men are completely impossible. She finds fault with everyone, expects perfection, and gets disappointed when real human beings can't live up to her idealized expectations. Our second daughter has had multiple abortions and won't even speak to her older sister anymore, something about different approaches to feminism. I don't even understand the details. Our third daughter has become this judgmental vegan who critiques everything I eat, everything I buy, every choice I make. Only our youngest seems somewhat normal after meeting a decent guy, but even she keeps me at arm's length. The house I fought so hard to keep became this empty monument to a life that no longer existed. The social circle moved on to other dramas. The financial security I thought I'd once started evaporating as property taxes increased and maintenance costs mounted without Mike's income to help cover everything. I tried dating, but every relationship ended the same way. Men would tell me I was too demanding, too critical, impossible to please. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd become everything I'd accused Mike of being: controlling, manipulative, never satisfied with anyone's efforts. When I saw Mike at our youngest daughter's wedding, he looked incredible, confident, successful, genuinely happy with some woman who clearly adored him. He was polite but distant, like I was just another wedding guest. He barely remembered our son, now a Princeton graduate, and wouldn't even acknowledge my existence. That's when it really hit me: I destroyed everything for an idea of empowerment that left me completely isolated. The girls eventually apologized for their part in breaking up the family, but the damage was permanent. We're all scattered now, broken, living with consequences that felt so righteous at the time. Mike's thriving. The kids respect him. And I'm the bitter ex-wife who chose ideology over family. I spent so much energy fighting for what I thought I deserved that I lost everything that actually mattered. The house is too big, too quiet, too full of memories of a family that doesn't exist anymore. But here's the thing, and I know this makes me sound awful, but I still can't bring myself to admit I was completely wrong. Maybe the execution was terrible, maybe I went too far, but those feelings were real. I really was invisible, really was taken for granted, really did lose myself in that marriage. I just wish there had been another way to address it that didn't cost me literally everything I actually cared about. Now I'm 52, alone in a house that's falling apart, watching my ex-husband live his best life while I wonder what the hell I was thinking. But even now, even seeing how it all turned out, part of me still thinks I deserved better than what I had. I just never imagined that getting what I deserved would feel exactly like losing everything that mattered.